Today on 15 Minutes, we cover the current controversy of same-sex marriage. Currently in the United States, as well as the world, many are in favor for same-sex marriage, while many others are against it. In our report, we discuss the various stances on same-sex marriage in the federal and state level, the differences between traditional marriage, civil union, and domestic partnership, as well as the interviews to discover the stances on a touching topic on average Americans. In 1996, the government of the United States of America passed the Defense of Marriage Act, commonly referred to as DOMA. The act characterized the institution of marriage as an act that can only be between a man and a woman. Section 2 declares that states and territories don't need to recognize a marriage, civil union, or a domestic partnership just because another state does. This portion protects the state's rights to administer its own laws on marriage. Section 3 of DOMA, however, was ruled unconstitutional in violation of the Fifth Amendment by the Supreme Court in June of 2013. Section 3 declared that the federal government will not recognize the same-sex marriage even if considered legally married by the state. The Supreme Court's ruling is one step closer to marriage equality in the United States of America. Here today with us is Allison Cohen, an editor of the New York Times. She is here to discuss differences in laws regulating marriage, civil union, domestic partnerships, and same-sex marriage. The federal government allows for each state to pass its own laws regulating marriage. Can you inform us on some of these state policies?
Thanks, Richard. I'm glad to be here. There are four main policies that states enforce regarding same-sex marriage in their state constitutions: marriage, civil union, domestic partnership, or the proposition of a marriage protection amendment.
How do these policies differ?
Same-sex marriage is one of the most progressive of all of the policies for a state constitution. In a traditional marriage, couples would benefit from health insurance and pension protection for federal employee spouses, Social Security benefits for widows, benefits for military spouses, joint income tax exemptions, and immigration protection for binational couples. Civil unions in the states that have legalized them generally have the same rights granted to them as a traditional marriage. By the end of 2013, 17 states had already recognized same-sex marriage as equal to a marriage between a male and a female. Vermont was the first state to recognize a civil union in 2000. However, because of the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, the federal government does not recognize these civil unions. Neither do other states that provide the legislation for civil unions. As a result, a civil union in Illinois, for example, would not be recognized in a state such as Texas, where any kind of same-sex unions are banned. The laws regarding a domestic partnership vary from state to state. For example, in Nevada or California, a domestic partnership is equivalent to a civil union. However, in a state like Wisconsin, for example, may have lesser rights granted to them. In the proposition of a marriage protection amendment, it would mandate that marriage in the United States shall consist solely of the union of a man and a woman. Neither this Constitution nor the Constitution of any state shall be construed to require that marriage or the legal incidents thereof be conferred upon any union other than the union of a man and a woman.
In places where civil unions are allowed, why do some believe that civil union is not enough?
Many people label civil unions as separate but unequal, making reference to the Jim Crow laws from America's racial segregation era. Members of a civil union receive most of the state rights and regulations of a married couple, though does not receive any federal benefits of marriage. In an article that I wrote, I mentioned people resent being denied use of the word marriage, which they say carries intangible benefits, prestige, and status.
How does a domestic partnership compare to a civil union?
Domestic partnerships are actually available to both same-sex and opposite-sex couples. Through a domestic partnership agreement, couples share responsibility for finances and welfare. Domestic partners don't benefit from tax cuts, inheritance, or the ability to obtain insurance for their partner.
What types of laws do states pass that are against same-sex marriage?
Some states have a conservative marriage protection amendment in their state constitutions. This means that the states do not recognize any type of partnership between people of the same gender.
How have people been challenging these laws, and how have these protests shaped America today? We will be investigating that after the break.
swag.
I avoided jail for 2 counts of murder when my lawyer said, "If the glove don't fit, you must acquit."
Watergate was my cover-up, but I'm not a crook.
We have never done anything illegal.
We have never been to jail.
We are good citizens.
We are proud Americans.
Yet our government won't allow us to marry the person we love.
And we're back. I have with me today 2 political analysts who have been following the issue of same-sex marriage over the past 2 years. They are here today to discuss the current situation and potential future of same-sex marriage. So, what are your opinions on how same-sex marriage has evolved over the past few years?
Well, I think we can all agree that the public's attitude towards same-sex marriage has come a long way, especially in the past few years. For the first time in our nation's history, there is a greater percentage of the population that supports LGBT rights than that opposes it. In a joint poll done by ABC and the Washington Post, 52% of Americans who voted believe that same-sex marriage should be legalized in all 50 states of the United States. However, although support and recognition of same-sex marriage has gained traction in the past few years, there is still a long way to go before everyone is truly equal. In the same poll, 40% of Americans oppose same-sex marriage, which is still a vast number of people.
And what do you think about the future of same-sex marriage?
I think we have an optimistic vision for the future of same-sex marriage. However, the current challenge for those supporting the passage is that legislation for same-sex marriage can only be passed at the state level rather than the federal level. This is because of DOMA, or the Defense of Marriage Act. The federal government does not support same-sex unions. States can pass their own legislations on the topic, however. Other states are not obligated to accept those laws within their state boundaries. As a result, a same-sex couple married in California will not be married within Texas. Although there is little the federal government can do to alter the fate of same-sex marriage within the United States, the Obama administration has been in support of passing of same-sex legislation. In May of 2012, President Obama stated that, "I want everyone treated fairly in this country. We have never gone wrong when we've extended rights and responsibilities to everybody."
You say that the decision of the legality of same-sex marriage is a state decision. Yet, you also say that the government can do something. What would be an example of what the government has done to show its support for same-sex marriage?
Well, just the other week, the Justice Department announced its plans to expand the legal benefits and services to same-sex marriage in what is being considered as a major milestone for same-sex marriage. The government plans on expanded recognition of same-sex marriages in federal legal matters, including bankruptcies, prison visits, and survivor benefits. And what is unique about the declaration is not only is it granting more benefits to same-sex marriages in the states that have either declared same-sex marriage, domestic partnership, or civil union legal, but in those states that have made same-sex marriage illegal. In 2013, the Supreme Court struck down a major part of DOMA that would prevent legally married couples from being allowed the same benefits as heterosexual couples.
Considering how much support that both the public and the White House have shown for same-sex marriage, who would oppose it and why?
I think we can all agree that religion plays a huge part in the opposition of same-sex marriage. If you were to ask someone who opposes the LGBT movement, chances are they cite religious beliefs for their opposition. Many look at the Bible when supporting their beliefs, especially Leviticus 18:22. As stated, do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is distasteful. In 1954, when the phrase, "one nation under God" was added in our own Pledge of Allegiance, many people feel obligated to follow this passage quite literally. It means, if you look at Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty, he said himself gay people are, quote, "full of murder, envy, strife, and hatred. They are mostly insolent, arrogant God-haters. They are heartless, they are faithless, they are senseless, they are truthless. They invent ways of doing evil." Upon reviewing such harsh dialogue, one can see how passionately Mr. Robertson is against gay marriage. And why do you suppose that is? It's because he's a conservative. And conservatives are people disposing to preserve existing conditions or institutions, to restore traditional ones, and to limit change. Hence, he uses his frame, as Ethan Sachs and Don Kaplan from the New York Daily News put it, as a soapbox for their religious beliefs and political conservatism.
Thank you, gentlemen. And that concludes today's segment of 15 minutes. Next time, we'll discuss why America will dominate the Winter Olympics.
I just saw Barack Obama's Senate seat. Oh, Baxter, you are such a character. What's that? This place smells like turds. How dare you? You have such a sassy mouth. Oh, but I still love you, Baxter. Can't believe I ever let you go. Gay people have rights too, you know. I don't know where I'm going with this. Yeah, I drive cars, I get drunk. Man, fucked up.
In 1996, the government of the United States of America passed the Defense of Marriage Act, commonly referred to as DOMA. The act characterized the institution of marriage as an act that can only be between a man and a woman. Section 2 declares that states and territories don't need to recognize a marriage, civil union, or a domestic partnership just because another state does. This portion protects the state's rights to administer its own laws in marriage. Section 3 of DOMA, however, was ruled unconstitutional in violation of the Fifth Amendment by the Supreme Court in June of 2013. Section 3 had declared that the federal government will not recognize a same-sex marriage even if considered legally married by the state. The Supreme Court's ruling is one step closer to marriage equality in the United States of America.